Hi, Paul. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but hi.
Hello.
I can't. We can't see your video though.
Hold on, I can turn my camera on.
Where's your beautiful face, Paul? Come
I know,
on.
right?
How are you?
I'm good. How's the lighting in here?
What's up?
How's the lighting in here? I like your outdoor picture. It's better. It's nice.
I'm
It's like
I'm
looks like
actually outside. It's not a picture.
no, I mean I like your outdoor environment, I should say. Sorry.
Yeah.
It looks very
I was just
quaint.
asking
Very quaint.
Ashlyn if the acoustics were okay because I am outside, but looks like we are. All right,
Awesome.
guys. It is 12 o'clock, so we are officially started. I want to welcome all the attendees to this webinar. I'm really excited for the topic because I feel like there's so much information out there about like the really big things that aggregators and buyers look for when it comes to purchasing a company and determining the value of the company. But there's so many other smaller things that you can actually implement now while you still are running your business that will have a great return when you go to exit, because these things really do matter when it comes to, an aggregator seeing if they even want to purchase your business. So I'm excited on the topic. I hope you all get some good nuggets of wisdom on this. My name is McLean Warren. I am the brand ambassador and marketing director at Ashland Haddon Insurance. And we have the beautiful Ashlyn Haddon here, also with
Good
Ashlyn.
morning. Good morning. I guess afternoon. Afternoon here in Indiana.
And the beautiful Paul Raffleson.
Thank you. Thank you.
Law Firm. Again, I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
you guys being on. I'm excited for this. All right, so what I want to do first is give you two a chance to talk about who you are, what you do, and how you got into the e-commerce Amazon business. So, Paul, I'll let you go first on this.
Who am I? I'm a lawyer. I'm just a guy. I practice law. My name is Paul Raffleson. I practice law. I've been a lawyer for since 2005, so however many years that is. I can't do math.
A million.
A million feels like it.
It feels like it in this industry, doesn't it?
I know. Well, the last 6 years I've been in e-commerce law. So I got into, I was an in-house lawyer for a lot of my life. I was very lucky. I had really cushy in-house jobs at Microsoft, Walmart, General Electric, and life was so great and stable and predictable that I decided to just throw a wrench in it and go into private practice. I used to be an e-commerce seller like early 2000s, before there was fulfillment by Amazon. It was a different world back then. And I saw this situation unfold with actually taxes back in 2017, and just sort of threw my hat in and started to help on that issue, and realized there's just so many issues that e-commerce sellers need help with, not just taxes, and saw this just wonderful opportunity to help small businesses and help them grow and understand that they're doing business in a national and international business economy. It's not like the olden days where small business meant you're local, like you're global. You're a global small business. What does that mean? So that's how I got into this. It was all kind of by accident. Started with a blog post about taxes, and the fact that I was an e-commerce seller. And now we're busy as ever, and we do Amazon account suspensions, appeals on one side of my business, and on the other side, we're doing everything to help our clients launch, grow, and exit their brand, and repeat it all over again. And the exits are definitely the most fun part of what we do, because that's a huge life milestone for our clients when they achieve that, and it's just an awesome, fulfilling thing to get to be a part of every time.
Paul, do you have two cameras with you right now?
No, do I look like I have two cameras?
Yeah, no, I just was curious. Okay.
I just have like a little Mac camera, probably wicked old.
That's just a paparazzi, McLean. It's just a paparazzi going for him.
It happens. It happens all the time.
I mean, when you're as famous as Paul, I mean, there's paparazzi all the time.
It is. It is weird. It is weird being, uber famous.
I'm surprised you're not in like some hacker outfit where you can't see your face.
Right. No, it's weird when I walk around like I'm walking by Taylor Swift and they're all taking pictures of me. I'm like, there's Taylor Swift. I'm like, what the heck? I have to take a helicopter to work.
That's when you say I'm her lawyer. So
There you
Exactly.
go.
There you go. Way to pad your resume. Claim to be
right.
Taylor Swift's lawyer. I'm not Taylor Swift's lawyer, for the record. Please don't accuse me of saying that I am. I do
I
not know.
expect some tickets then.
Exactly. I know, right?
All
I'd
right,
take
Ash,
on a.
you're up, girl.
All right, so I'm Ashlyn Haddon, owner of Ashlyn Haddon Insurance. I have accidentally fallen into the e-commerce business. I was a auto, home, life insurance rep for a large institution and decided to go out on my own, open my own agency. And one of my clients came to me and said, I need this insurance policy to sell on Amazon. And I told him to go away, that I didn't want to help. I didn't know that there was even Amazon third-party sellers on Amazon. I thought Amazon sold everything on Amazon.
Yeah.
So it wasn't worth my time and kind of shoot him away. But he didn't listen and kept continuing to come back. So 7 years later, we have over 10,000 e-commerce sellers. And we live, eat, and breathe Amazon and all e-commerce platforms. So why it's important for exiting insurance or exiting your business in insurance, we'll talk about today. But we're really excited to be here. So thanks for putting this together, McLean.
And Ashlyn, you guys, of course, the lawnmower comes by. I might have to switch scenes. But Ashlyn, you also are starting to, I know you've been doing it for a while, but you're also starting to branch off and focus on personal line stuff too, right?
Yes, yeah. So we're licensed in every single state except Hawaii in every single line. So we have somebody here that can do auto, home, life, RV, boat, business, mom and pop shop, everything but health insurance. Do not ask me about health insurance. I don't know jack about health insurance.
Fair enough. Well, thank you for those intros. I'm going to start with this question, and if it's not relevant to you, then we'll just skip over it. But have either of you guys sold a business before, like your own business?
No, I've never sold my own business before.
Okay.
I have
All right.
not.
Well, we'll just skip over that question. Today's topic, as I said in the beginning, is lesser known ways to optimize the value of your Amazon business. I believe the big factors in what aggregators look for are covered extensively, but now I want to do like the smaller, more obscure factors. I'll direct this question to you. Sorry, guys, I'm gonna have to move because this lawnmower, but I'm gonna volley this question to you, Paul, to start out with. With regards to your line of work, which would be law, tell us what are some key factors that potential buyers consider when evaluating an e-commerce business for acquisition.
Absolutely. So, I want to say, especially in this environment, compliance. Sometimes you start going through the process of selling your business. You get a letter of intent. You're moved by the prospective buyer. And then they start digging into the weeds through this process that we know as due diligence, and they learn things about your business that maybe you're not compliant with some particular rule or law, which puts you at risk of deactivation, right? So that's always a big one, and that does happen from time to time, where somebody just finds out sort of like in this process that they didn't do their homework. Sometimes it's an easy fix, sometimes it's not, right? It depends. If it's an FDA issue, depending on what category it could take years. Like, it just depends on the issue. So I always encourage people to think about their products, think about the potential compliance issues around them, because for a long time on Amazon, you didn't have to be compliant. Like, even if you should have, like, there was nobody really policing that, but that changed in the last few years. So it's really becoming an issue because the buyers are, they're serious investors that are behind, like, it's not just like, let's say it's an Amazon aggregator. It's not just the aggregator. It's the lender that's behind them. And they are the ones who actually review these deals before they go out, as part of a committee review, and may make a call that that's just too much risk that they're willing to take. So that's a big one that I see. This is probably a very self-serving question because I'm gonna pick on all the legal issues, but they're important, right? I mean, people
I'm gonna
Do
pick
not
on
catalog.
the insurance issue. So let's go.
That's fine. So this is great. Right. So I mean, people don't catalog their IP properly. Like, everyone just gets one trademark with brand registry and that's it. And then it's like, but you have all these other trademarks in your business, and you have to make promises about your business, about whether you own those trademarks, whether they're registered or not. Right. And there's just so much people don't understand cataloging um, we've had deals where, clients have used a lot of imagery, a lot of patterns. They license from, all over the place. And sometimes those licenses are garbage, right? Sometimes they're not assignable. They're not transferable. Um, so if you're working with a contractor, like on Fiverr, make sure you own the rights to those things, right? Make sure you have the appropriate documentation says you own whatever it is they're doing, right? A lot of times you don't have that, and then that becomes an issue. So there's these little things that I think, it's not that they're going to necessarily add value on the front end, but they can certainly cause an erosion of value later on if you don't have them done right. And so for that reason, we always really encourage people to start, looking early internally at their stuff and just making sure they're in a good position. I feel like people just kind of rush into an exit and don't really, and then when you're kind of going through the due diligence or the disclosure elements of the deal, then you start to realize you've got all these issues, and
Yeah.
it can have a major effect on things.
Hey, Paul. So let's say I'm 6, 7 years into my brand, and I've used
Mhm.
Fiverr and I don't have the documentation. What kind of things could you do as their legal representative to help clean that up prior to putting this up for acquisition?
Right. So obviously, we would tell you, like, if you can contact those people, get an assignment of rights. It's a quick document. Takes, it's like a couple sentences. Sign it. Do that. If the licenses you're missing, let's say you're missing imagery that you're using on your packaging, it may be that the solution might just be having to redo it over again, right? And that may be the way to go, right? Where you just kind of say, well, I can't prove that I have the rights to this, so I'm going to change it. If you can do that without disrupting your entire business, that may be the way to go. But it's sort of just evaluating those types of options and like what your IP is. It may also be registering trademarks. I think people really under register their trademarks. They create these cool variations. They give them cool names, right? And they do that for years and years, but they never thought to register that variation name as a trademark or that logo. You know what I mean? And now they're making this promise that they have it, and they're but they didn't register it, and you don't really know until you've really gone through the registration process. You don't really know for sure what the barriers are. So those are the things we would just like to see people come talk to us early, and just just do little bits of cleanup here and there, and just kind of audit, right, your brand and your assets, and take inventory of what you have, what you're missing, what potential problems could pop up. So that's on sort of one side of that's one issue we see a lot, just sort of like a lack of, proper ownership of what you have, right?
Now,
And
Paul,
that sucks.
you just said, I wish people would come to us earlier. Do you mean prior to opening up your business for buyers? Or do you mean, like, say someone is just a year into their business, they have a lot set up, they're doing pretty well, but they don't plan on exiting anytime soon. Is there ever time to too early do this stuff? Or do you think it's something that, like, you do right away?
I think it's both. I mean, I think if you start early, you get the benefit from the learning, right? So we get to kind of just help you by advising you, and you get to do it right the first time. If you come a little too late, then it's like we got to fix it. And fixing is always harder, right? So it's like the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure, right? It's that same point. The earlier you start working with qualified advisors who understand, where your roadblocks could be in the future, then the better you are prepared for that exit when the time comes. So, and it's going to be cheaper because you're going to be doing it. You're going to be thinking about this stuff on the front end. You're going to be like, okay, do I have an assignment of rights with my Fiverr guy? Well, before I hire this Fiverr person, I'm going to give them this document. Do I know where the Fiverr person is getting their imagery from? Right. I'm going to track that down. It's like doing that. It's also sort of like the idea of, like, if you just put the toy away, you wouldn't have to clean your room so often, right? Just when you're done playing with it, like what you tell your kids, right? Like when you're done playing with it, you just put it back, then you don't have this giant messy room. So it's like, so from that perspective, I would say early is always better, right? The more you can do on the front end, the less you have to deal with it in the back end.
Can I jump in here too and answer this part? Because you're like leading right into the palm of my hand, Paul.
Go. That's what I knew that, and that's
Yes,
what I
right,
did.
right. So this is like
This is I'm just setting up the ball. And you're gonna spike it, right? Slam.
On the insurance side, I can't insure a burning building. So you come to me, you're ready to sell, and they're like, hey, I need insurance now. Okay, I can't insure something that happened in the past. So if you have a claim, you're about ready to sell, something comes up, I can't help you. You have got to get your insurance in place first before there's a claim that happens. Then something, down the line, and of course we're going to cover it back there. But as far as going through an acquisition, they're going to look at your claims history. They're going to want to know, have you prevented things from happening? Have you, helped make sure that the brand is protected throughout the entire, 5, 6, 7 years or whatever that you've been doing this? So they're going to look for something with consistency. Did you get insurance in the beginning? Have you continued to have coverage through this entire time? Have you changed your coverage? As you continue to grow, have you changed and endorsed your policy and grew with your policy? Had those coverage updates, things like that. They're going to look to see if there's any lapses in coverage. They're going to see if there's any gaps in coverage. So yeah, you might have product liability, but do you have product recall insurance? Do you have coverage for if there's a product that harms somebody? How are you going to get that back out of the hands of the consumers? Things like that. When you go to sell, they're going to want to make sure that you've got a good brand and that brand hasn't hurt anyone. And if it did hurt somebody, what have you done about it? So again, what Paul's saying, an ounce of prevention, get it now, get it up front, plan for the future, plan for this exit. Don't just call them like, hey, I need this now. Plan for your future. So
I think when a lot of people start out, like they don't really take themselves seriously, or they're not serious. Like they just, and you could kind of get away with that the old Amazon way, but like today, it's Amazon, right? You have to remember, years ago, Amazon could sort of escape their own liability by saying, hey, we're just like a flea market in this, we're just a sort of a connector. We're not really a part of the deal of the average consumer transaction that occurs on Amazon. It's the seller. Now the courts have pretty much rejected that argument, and they're holding Amazon liable. So as you've seen, Ashley, and we've seen this together, right? More and more people are people having to, and hence why Amazon made this a policy and actually enforced it. We have to name Amazon as additional insured, right? And they expect the sellers to hold them harmless. They expect indemnification if anything happens. So whether that's an insurance related issue, whether it's something with your labeling of your product, whatever it is, if Amazon gets a bill for it, like you're paying for it. So there really isn't as much room today not to take this stuff seriously. And you should, if you're serious about building a brand and a business. If you're not, then you're just trying to make a quick buck. Maybe you'll get away with it. I don't know. But if you're trying to build real enterprise value.
The rule that Amazon came up with in 2020 was that you needed, if you had $10,000 in sales over 30 consecutive days, then you needed a general liability with product liability. So general liability is going to be what you do or say as a business. Product liability is going to be what your products do to harm someone else. So Amazon said you just need those two things once you hit that 30 days of $10,000 in sales. But sometimes that's not enough. Again, that's just what Amazon wants you to have. If you're going to sell your business, your buyer might want something else. They should absolutely want something else. They should want product recall coverage. They should want cyber insurance. They should want, inventory coverage, things like that. But Amazon just said, hey, we just need general liability and product liability. And sometimes, guys, that's just not enough.
Yeah. And I'm going to jump in here too and say that with regards to skimping on the rules and trying to get away with stuff, when a buyer aggregator goes to look at your business, they're looking at your behavior history, because if it's showing that you had lapses in your coverage, you didn't abide by Amazon or Walmart or whoever's, whatever platform you're on, by the rules, where else are you failing? What other aspects of your business have you just made bad judgment calls? Because it does speak to your business as a whole if you're not doing things like getting your trademarks in and getting your insurance, settled. Like, that stuff really matters. So
It definitely changes the vibe of a deal, right? Like I've seen some deals go through with terrible, like completely non-compliant stuff. And I've seen, some of the aggregators say, whatever, we need to close this thing. And that's why some of them are hurting right now, because maybe they bought some toxic assets. But there definitely is a change. Like when they find things in due diligence, we're like, that's weird. If it does, like whether it closes or not becomes a question. And then, how it closes, like it sort of changes the dynamic. Like suddenly now they're going to push for an aggressive indemnification package where you're basically guaranteeing them a sure thing. And if anything goes wrong, they're going to have the right to claw back whatever they can take from, whatever they paid you. So it's like, it really just sets you up to be in a really tough situation sometimes. Right. And it does depend on how much negotiation leverage you want to throw into it, but it really does set the buyers up for a situation where they're just demanding kind of what we'd say above market indemnity, because they question your judgment about how you're going about things, like if things aren't compliant.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of panelists on today, guys, so I'm going to zoom in with the next ones. But is there any final words of wisdom you want to impose on the audience? Just to let you guys know, the audience members, after this webinar, there will be a thank you card that gives you guys the contact information and even some discounts and deals in the services, and that will also be emailed to you. But I also wanted to ask, Paul and Ashlyn, if there's anything else you wanted to close with.
I'm just gonna say the other topic I'm very passionate about is just because I maybe because I failed the CPA exam in 2001 and decided to become a lawyer, is numbers. Numbers are so freaking important. We've seen so many bad valuations because the numbers are wrong. People are not taking, you're doing cash basis inventory accounting. That's the most awful thing you can do. It can result in substantially undervaluing your business. The other thing that throws me is companies that, let's say you have like 5 hero SKUs and one awful, terrible SKU that's actually costing you money, right? The ability to just sort of say, hey, I won't sell you that awful SKU. So that way you're not having like the loss product affecting the profitability of your other products. Like there are ways that you can sort of, this is like KKR in the 80s where like the sum of the parts might be worth more than the whole. That's an okay analysis. You can pull it, look for those opportunities and really, have your business evaluated financially just to make sure that you're thinking of every angle to make sure that you're presenting yourself in the best possible light before you go to market. Because I just think it'll mess up numbers so much. And it despite my limited accounting experience, I have enough to see it. So it's like I see it enough times to know that like it's off. So definitely double and triple check your numbers. It can make a huge world of difference. And that's my final thoughts for today. So thank you so much.
I'll pop in real quick on not an insurance topic. I think when I look at acquiring another business, I'm looking at the company's culture. What is their culture like? What are their people like? How do they like their job? How do they like their boss? How do they interact with each other? One thing that I've been focusing on the last 5 years as I've opened my company is my culture. How do my people interact with each other? For example, we just went down to Tennessee. I took all our local people down to Tennessee in the cabin for the weekend. And we just got to bond and experience and team build and do some crazy ass stuff for the weekend. But it really bonds us closer together. So when somebody comes in someday that wants to buy my business, we have a great culture here. So I think about what you're building now and how that's going to continue on for the next couple of years. So that's my last tidbit. Be good to each other.
All
I
right,
love
guys.
it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys being on. And like I said, how to contact these wonderful people will be, all that information will be sent to you. So these are definitely people you want on your side. And I say that like you're the mafia, but anyway. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
You do sell protection. You might not be wrong about that. So, you know,
I know, right?
so
All
thank you
right.
so much. Take care. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, guys. All right. Sorry, bear with me, guys. I have to move everyone out of this so I can open up the slots. So bear with me real quick. All right. And I'm going to bring on Yael. Let's bring you on, girl. And Ian. I don't know.
Hello.
There we go.
Hey, can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I always love seeing your pretty face. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yes. How's it going?
Good. It's good. Just busy. Sure. Hi,
Good.
Ian. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. All right, let's do a quick introduction of these two awesome people. We have Ian Bauer with Graphic Rhythm, and we have Miss Yael Kabili with Fortinet as well as eKabili. So I'm going to let each of you kind of reintroduce yourself, talk about your company a little bit, and how you got into the Amazon space. So Yael, we'll start with you.
Okay, sure. So I'm originally a lawyer. I started a law firm that focuses on e-commerce in 2016. So doing at the law firm mostly trademarks, copyrights, patents, and suspensions. We're a team of 16 people, 6,000 clients, 7,000 I think by now. So that's the law firm. And in 2018, together with two partners, Michal and Omri, we founded Fortinet, which is an investment bank where we help medium and large e-commerce businesses sell the business when they're ready and getting ready to that. So the preparation and then through the process. So that's me in a nutshell.
How did you specifically get into like Amazon and e-commerce though?
Was a trademark lawyer. I helped a seller on a trademark issue, and like he receives a cease and desist letter for a trademark infringement. And then actually he had a Facebook group of like 1,000 seller back then. And he told me, is it okay if I publish whatever happened to me so that other people will know and what happened to them? And then he did. And then like 40 sellers came to me on the same day. And then we did a webinar. And then tons of sellers reached out. So I realized there's something there, and nobody takes care of these sellers. So that's how I got into that. And Fortinet, this was out of a need Michal and I saw in the industry. There were brokers which fit more the I would say maybe the smaller businesses or medium businesses. But we felt that for the larger businesses, the white glove service was missing back then. Today, there are several companies like us. So we started kind of one of the first investment banks in the e-commerce space.
Very cool. And Ian?
Well, hello. So, I started Graphic Rhythm because it kind of spun out of my own Amazon seller business. So we were involved in Amazon right from the first minute. My first business that I owned and still owned is around selling on Amazon. And we actually started getting into merch by Amazon through that business, creating T-shirts and stuff like that. So I hired a graphic designer, and we utilized that graphic designer to enhance the listings of our brands that we were selling. And then, the Amazon world is a tight-knit community, and one thing led to another, and people were saying like, hey, could your designer do that for me? And that was basically how Graphic Rhythm was born. I was like, yeah, sure, we could do that for you. So these days we do, obviously Amazon, all things Amazon optimization, every single touch point on Amazon we can help you with. But we also do quite a bit of other things, including brand design, visual identity design, logo design, things like that. So that's where we are and what we help our customers with.
Yeah, and I heard you say brand, which is, essentially what you're going to be talking about today is the difference between a company and a brand. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Question for both of you, and if the answer is no, we'll just move to the next question. But have either of you guys owned a business that you've sold?
No, not personally. No, never sold. Just creating them.
Yeah.
Yes, I actually sold Graphic Rhythm. So Graphic Rhythm is part of a bigger Amazon agency now that actually manages brands on Amazon with a gigantic portfolio of brands. And so they took us. They were one of our big clients for a long time, and they approached us and were like, "Hey, do you want to come into?" The name of it is Spotlight Brand Services. Do you want to come into Spotlight as our creative team? And so I came on as a partner, and Graphic Rhythm became the creative team. And now we have our forward-facing, Graphic Rhythm still serves the same purpose and serves their clients in the same way as before, but now we're also the creative team for Spotlight. So that's an exciting move that's really strengthened us.
Well, I was going to ask, and it might not be relevant in your scenario, but I was going to ask what your experience was in terms of like them deciding the value of it, and if there were anything that like you were surprised at them doing, or anything like from a personal standpoint that you would recommend to people.
Yeah, so I kind of had my eyes open going into it and was prepared for a few different things. One thing that was really important to them was understanding that this wasn't kind of like a cult of personality, or I wasn't like a one man band. They wanted to know that it was repeatable. That if something happened to me, like the business could still function. And so like we have really in-depth systems and processes in our business. It's something that I beat the drum about constantly. And so they were really happy to see that it was repeatable. They were also happy to see that there were key players in the business that weren't me. So I do stuff like this and come on webinars like this, but like I have a production team that really knows what they're doing. They execute on the promises that I make, and that was really important for them to see as well.
So by repeating, the work, if you were to exit, or I don't know, just didn't want to do it anymore, are you essentially saying that like just having very extensive and strict SOPs was, I mean, I know it's more to it than that, but was that part of the importance of that specific umbrella of what they were looking for?
Yep, that was something that was really important to them, is to make sure that there were like actual processes for the business. If you think about a business, a real business is a collection of processes, that work to produce a result for your clients or your customers. And so that's what they were looking for.
Awesome. Good to know. All right. So as you guys know, the name of the game is lesser known ways to optimize the value of your Amazon or e-commerce business. So Yael, I would love for you, like I keep repeating already in this webinar, is that I don't really want to focus on like big things that everyone always talks about, but more obscure aspects of the buying and selling process that can either make or break your business or change its value.
Yeah. I guess one of the things most people ask about recently and they don't necessarily know is if there's a market, if there's still a market, if aggregators are still buying. That's kind of the first question that when we have those discussions, we realize that, well, we feel everybody knows everything. Not everybody has this feel of a market. So the first thing I would say is, if you're counting on selling the business, I mean, everybody knows that timing is very, very important. The market right now is very stable, at least on the M&A, e-commerce M&A side. We've seen, I mean, for several months last year, there was a decline after the big 2021, I'd say, bubble. After that, we saw a decline, and since then it's kind of stabilizing. I think that what we see is that some businesses that you could maybe sell in 2021 cannot be sold today. Those that are struggling with low margins, these are businesses that will be difficult to sell, and businesses that are declining sometimes will be difficult to sell unless there's a reason for that. So these businesses are difficult, while larger businesses that are growing with big margins or at least decent margins, we actually see a good demand for those, and we actually see new players as the buyers. So while in the past the aggregators were jumping on every business that we took to the market, today there are additional players that are quicker than they used to be. Okay, so in the past they were there, but not necessarily bidding as fast and as others. So for example, strategic buyers. Okay, if you're I don't know, a pets company, if you have a pet product, then a larger pet company may be interested, if they're not on Amazon or they may be starting on Amazon, may be interested to buy this business. Or if you're I don't know, you have a baby store on Amazon, maybe a large baby toys or baby company would be interested. So strategic buyers is what we see recently a lot. And as a seller, you when you make that decision of when to sell, I think you need to analyze your business, perhaps with someone who understands, but understand if you are really in the right place. And if you are not, going back to what you were discussing earlier, there's a lot to be done before the exit. So if you start a year before the exit, you can do two things. One, focus on what's needed to make that business sellable, and two, correct all the legal mistakes that Paul was referring to. And that's something that we put a lot of emphasis on, at least at Fortunate. We often start advising our client like a year before to make sure that they'll pass the due diligence in a year. Okay, so there's like 4 or 5 steps that we do at that time to make sure that they'll pass the due diligence then. So there's no like secret sauce. If you do that, then everybody will buy your business. But you need to understand the market. Have a few conversations with a few advisors. If you have an interesting business, anybody will be happy to have at least the first conversation. Understand where you are, and set a goal. What do you need to do to get there? So Ian here was lucky enough to have a business that was probably set, ready to be acquired, but many businesses are simply not there, and if they won't ask, they won't take the necessary steps to get there.
Yeah. Do you guys do I don't know if this exists, I'm sure it does, but do you do business audits just like for people who may not be looking to sell right away, but just people that need coaching essentially on what areas they need to work on?
Yeah, we actually, so first of all, we have because of that, we actually developed a tool that's on our website so that people can at least make a first, assessment of where they are. So they're actually, we're asking questions, they reply, and they can assess where they are and what's the level of risk and what they need to do, at least on the health legal side. So it's all there. But very often, yes, we have those conversations. For us, in some cases, we actually get married there. Like a year before, we actually start working towards the exit. So of course we bet on these businesses. We have to be sure that they'll be able to sell it down the road. But yes, we often really start working as part of the business. And if it's just for the audit, we have that cool tool that that I think is helpful. We improve it every time with a new problem that we see on due diligence, and we change it so that it's accurate.
Now, do you earlier you obviously were talking about being there at the right time, essentially. I appreciate that you talked about the aggregator and M&A craze that happened, between 2019 to 2022, where they were buying up everything. And you mentioned that like now people or buyers or aggregators are looking, they're being more strategic about who they pick up. And you also mentioned about, like being there at the right time. How does a person, if they're ready to exit, like actually, let's just take right now. Do you see a trend in certain types of businesses or certain types of products that are getting better valuations and interest? And what are those?
Yes, actually. I mean, it doesn't mean that others cannot be sold, but we see that when we, for example, anything in the beauty cosmetics industry has a lot of demand. Every time we go to market, we get many offers for those, many eyes on that, and all types, like private equity firms and strategics and aggregators. They're all bidding on beauty brands. Pets, I was mentioning earlier, is also a hot area. Supplements, which used to be the area that actually aggregators did not want, now they're really interested in supplements. Babies is the fourth one. I'd say these four are the hottest. But again, I mean, all others can be sold, and you need to find the right one. These are the ones that have the higher demand, and there are categories that have less demand, I guess, among aggregators, like fashion, electronics, anything that you need to renew all the time. That's a little more challenging. Or businesses with with 3,000, 4,000 SKUs. These are sometimes a challenge operationally for some of the buyers. So that's also maybe has less demand than a simpler business among aggregators.
I would love to know, and I don't know if you know the answer to this. Because I've always heard and had clients that were in the supplemental category, and it was always very hard because it was very competitive. Yeah. But also the rules around what you can say on a listing, what's in the products, like they're very strict. Do you know why? So I was surprised when you said it's a very hot business type right now for aggregators. Do you have any understanding of why it happens to have changed?
Yeah, I think that they feared compliance, at least as a new player. So like you said, any of these businesses have some compliance, and a lot of the aggregators were afraid that one day Amazon says, hey, you cannot sell vitamin C on Amazon anymore. So I think that was the initial fear. As many of these companies grew and now have more confidence, and they know more about compliance, so they can take more risk in that sense. And they love supplements as they love cosmetics, because very often you have recurring customers. So any subscribe and save products on Amazon are very attractive for buyers generally.
Interesting. All right, Ian, you are up. So I particularly love your topic that you chose, because as someone who runs the marketing department, I really respect and appreciate the importance behind branding. So what I would love for you to do is first define what having a brand means, and then kind of talk about how it can potentially change the value of your company based on what your brand is.
Yeah, so the disconnect that I see working with brand owners, and we work with a lot of private label sellers, single product brands, and so on and so forth. The disconnect that I see is that the brand owner thinks that they have a brand, but what they actually have is a product. And the difference between a product and a brand is when obviously a product is, what it is, it's whatever you're selling, but a brand is the way that people feel about your product, right? So that's your brand. And a lot of brands have a brand by accident, and they think that their brand is their logo, or they think that their brand is their packaging, or that it's their social media graphics or their insert design or whatever. And unintentionally, they have a brand, which is, what their customers are actually saying and feeling and thinking about how they interact with those touch points. So for me, shifting that perspective so that people understand that, hey, if you're just repeating a message over and over, that's not branding, that's marketing. If you're just putting things out in the world, that's not branding. What branding is when your customers say to you, hey, this is how I feel about your product. That's what your brand is.
Right.
And can you turn a product to a brand if you have a strong Amazon product? Would you be able to turn it into a brand?
Yeah. So the nice thing about this is that you can influence this, right? Ultimately, you can. So the things that you put out there, or the touch points that your client has, or I'm going to say client because because I have clients, but the touch points that your customer has are things that you can influence, and then ultimately you can influence the way that they feel about your product through those touch points, and just by being intentional about it. Um, so we actually take our clients that come to us for a rebrand through a process. Well, before I describe that process, let me just describe what I feel very strongly is the wrong process. Now, people disagree with me on this, so this is not like the end all be all. And what I consider the wrong way does work for some people, but the wrong way, in my opinion, is to basically go to a graphic designer or a creative team or an agency and say, "Here's what I like. Create me something that looks like that." And the reason that I think that fails a lot of times, it's why actually the thing that frustrates me is that you do what I call poisoning the well of creativity. You're dropping in ideas that you like, and your design team will tend to skew towards those, right? So it's just an iterative process. We're just making a bunch of stuff, and you're picking one that you like. So we got away from that process a long time ago, and we've had a 100% success rate since then. And the process that we use now is we don't want to talk about what you like. We don't want to talk about what looks good to you or brands that you admire or anything like that, because it's just going to skew us towards that. What we want to know are, what are the brand attributes that you're trying to embody with your brand? And so that looks like culture, which Ashlyn talked about earlier. So we want to know what are attributes for your culture, your customers, your voice, so how you sound to your customers, the feeling that you want to inspire, the impact that your product has on them, and what is your unique selling proposition. So we take all those brand attributes, and from there we develop a visual identity. And there's a few more steps in that process, but that's the main thrust of what we do, and we get a unique result that doesn't look like your competitors, that doesn't look like the things that you aspire to be or whatever, or that you're inspired by. It looks like you, like your brand.
And why is that? Actually, you know what? I need a question for you, but because I have to circulate all the panelists, Yael, I'm gonna let you go because
Thank
I
you
need
very
a
much.
break on here. But is there anything you wanted to end with or say to everyone?
No, I think I'll continue the message we had earlier about the importance of preparation. If you're thinking about increasing the value of your exit down the road, then now is the time to analyze your business, understand it better, understand where the issues are, if there are any, and there are issues in every business, even mine. So analyze your business, understand it, and work towards that exit. If you prepare and you do it in advance, the result will be better.
Awesome. And I keep repeating myself, but all of your information will be sent out to people if anyone's interested in contacting EIL or learning more. Thank you so much. I'm sorry to cut this short.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Give me 1 second, Ian, so I can move them over. All right, let's get Greg on here. All right, Ian, I apologize for interrupting you. Again, the way this webinar is set up, you can only have 2 people on at once, so it makes it kind of fun trying to juggle everyone. I want to get back to what you were saying, and I know, again, I cut you off, but with regards to branding, say you have people that have already, quote unquote, established a brand. Like right now, some of these people, probably all these people who are on right now, are hearing you and they're thinking, well, I already created the logos, I've created this and that. What would be your advice for that?
Yeah, so that's a very common scenario that we get into, where you've already got something going, and so we take a look at it and we decide, all right, so is the brand as it stands strong enough that you want to iterate on that, right, and maybe push it in a certain direction, or do you want to rebrand? A lot of our clients want to rebrand, because you're already going to have to redo all the packaging, you're already going to have to do the website all over again. And so might as well swing for the fences when you do that. So that's typically what we wind up doing, and what we look at is what's working for the brand well now, and that comes from actual customer feedback. Like when you talk to your customers, what do they say? What do they love about you? What do they love about your product? What do they love about interacting with you? And then now let's talk in an aspirational way. Where do you want to grow? What else do you want them to know? What do you want to correct? What are things that you see that you don't like that you wish were better? And we incorporate all of that into the thrust of the branding that we're going through.
And how does all of this equate to the topic of this, which is why that makes your brand more valuable to aggregators?
Well, so for starters, people love a brand, like actual branding, things that people demonstrate affinity towards. I have some studies here. There's one study here from Adobe. It says that companies that invest in good design and good branding have 32% higher revenue than companies that don't, and 75% higher customer satisfaction, and that 45% of buyers say that they would pay more money for a well-designed brand. Now, these statistics are kind of design skewed, but it shows the impact of a well-designed brand. And if you look at the brands that we love, they evoke a feeling. It's not just about a product, it's about a feeling. Mm-hmm. And so by having a brand, a real brand that people feel like they're part of, it's this tribalism that you're trying to create, a tribe of people. One of my favorite brands out there is Yeti, and the reason I love Yeti is because it's just a friggin' cooler, right? But they've created this tribalism around it where people are happy to carry around that logo and wear that logo, but it's just a cooler, and that's kind of like what you aspire to do with branding. And so by having that, you also could have a following or a culture, and a tribe behind you, and that makes you more valuable.
Yeah, and I mean, I've said this forever, but I think people set out to buy a product because of something they need or think they want. But what converts that sell is the feeling that product evokes. That's the ultimate decider in if someone's going to buy your product or not. And more to the point, if you have good branding, your client retention and the following, like you said, will be high, which is a huge thing that aggregators look for. They want to know that you can retain clients, that you have, loyal followers, that this brand is going to carry out once they purchase it, into their own company. So I love what you have to say about that.
Thank you.
For sure. again, really short on time. So Greg, I'm going to get to you, but I'm going to let Ian go. Ian, is there anything that you wanted to kind of say as a final thought or a wrap up?
Yeah, I would just say evaluate whether or not you have a brand at all, or if you just have a product. Or if you have a brand, is it an intentional brand or is it a brand that you fell into by accident? And if you want to change that, take a look at those brand attributes, particularly the voice, the culture, the feeling, and the impact. And what you're going to do is you're going to come up with single word adjectives to describe each of those things. And that's how you get started on this path towards developing an intentional brand that actually impacts customers.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on here. I'm sure you're very busy, so we appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
All right, bye. Mr. Greg, hello. You were waiting patiently for your time in the attendee room.
Sure, but it's been very interesting hearing what others have been speaking about, and obviously the overlaps are everywhere. And I always say that at the end of the day, customers are the glue. Yeah, that's what this is all about.
Absolutely. Why don't you take a few minutes to introduce yourself, your company, and how you got into the Amazon space, all that.
Sure. Look, we fell into selling back in 2014, where it was relatively easy to find a product that looked kind of good. You'd ship it into the US and you'd start selling it. And you needed some reviews, so you'd go out and buy those legitimately, and build your tribe, if you like, your Yeti audience behind you, get the numbers rolling, and it wasn't as sophisticated back then as it is now, of course. So we had a blast through 2014 and into 2015, and then we'd outsourced everything possible, and it'd been more, I think, too much absentee owners, and then the wheels started to fall off, and one thing led to another, and some awful templates were sent out to customers, low star reviews. We've all heard it. Sales start to go down. And the recovery is never good, is it? We brought it all back in house and tried to build back, but we'd lost a lot of momentum. And in that time, competitors had come into the space, and so what you had a big slice of a pie became smaller and smaller. So that's how that was our e-commerce journey. And quite by coincidence, what we'd done is we were talking to a neighbour. She'd taken early retirement, and it was doing her head in. And we said, "Look, you want to help us with our customer service?" That was her background, and so she jumped in and was making a really good fist of it. And then a good friend of ours, his business just started to blow up, and he said, "Look, can you help with our customer service?" And we did. And then he said, "Look, my brother's sold his other business. He's gone into e-commerce. Have a look at his listings and his seller feedback, which was not good." And he said, "Well, just get hold of my brother and just get onto it." So our customer service help, if you like, grew out of our own angst. And by 2017, we launched under Zon support. It was like, back then, Zon something was really cool. Now there's just Zon everybody, and I want to sue the pants off them. I want them to go away. People say, "Oh, you were part of Zon this, Zon that." I said, "No, we were the first." Yeah. Anyway, so that's our pathway, if you like. We no longer sell because 2017 into 18, the resources required for Zon support, because we started to scale so fast, really needed cash and focus, sort of thing. Yeah.
So what exactly does Zon support do? Really,
look, our wheelhouse is customer service. If it's customer facing, if it touches a customer in one form or another, that's what we're there for, sort of thing. So it's the typical things you think of if we're just talking about an Amazon business. It's the messages that come out, it's the refunds, the returns, the replacements, the seller feedback, low star reviews, all that kind of stuff. And Amazon, of course, is a very structured business. And so a lot of people, start to say, "Well, you can't do this and you can't do this." all these armchair experts say, well, terms of service say you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, which really doesn't apply. You've really just got to focus, I think, at the end of the day on what the most important dynamic is, and that is, your returns. Frankly, anybody who's buying your business is straight away going to go and look at your returns to have a look what's going on there, as much as they look at your low star reviews. Yeah, it's kind of, the account health, if you will, just like Amazon do. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say they're looking at the returns, which I agree with, like obviously buyers are going to look at like what's your percentage of returns, how many satisfied clients there are, like obviously your reviews, all that stuff really matters. But how do you guys like stop, how do I phrase this? How do you guys help with diminishing returns or getting better reviews?
It's a bit like Yale spoke of. There's a pathway here. It doesn't happen overnight. You need to put some clear strategies in place to try and if we take returns, for example, you're wanting to try to find a way to mitigate those. Number one, you don't want them coming back into Amazon because it's just going to ping your return metrics. Okay. Number two, anybody who's buying your business, those return metrics are going to, impact your valuation. It's going to discount your valuation because not only is it a return, but it's the cost of cash because you bought the product, you brought it into the country, you've shipped it out, and now it's coming back. And so far, all it is cost. There's no revenue out of it. So what I try to say to people is, look, your customer service is about supporting your existing sales. Your marketing, your branding, all that kind of stuff that Ian touched on is the other side. That's your new sales. And I think this is the difficulty that operators of businesses have is where is their best focus? Is it to save the existing sales, or is it to focus on the front end and drive? But when you're focused on the front end and driving, if you're not careful, it's all just turning to tears in the background. So what you need to do is you need to have some clear processes, SOPs in place of things you're going to do. One of the most basic things you can do is you can get a return notification from Amazon as soon as a customer's told you a return's going to come in. So what are you going to do with that information? Are you going to reach out to them all? Maybe your volume's too big. Maybe there's just an ASIN. Maybe it's a variation, a certain color or a certain size or whatever that is when you look at your returns, what's driving them and what do I need to do to try and reduce that? And it does happen over time. Yeah. Right.
I'm trying to. Sorry. Go on. No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm trying to find. I'm looking at a blog I actually wrote a while ago, but I'm trying to find the exact number. But essentially, and this goes back to what I was talking about with Ian, which is client lifetime value and retention. And that, like you're saying, it seems like a lot of businesses, once they've sold the product, they kind of forget about the customer. But when that happens and you don't have that follow up or, that maintenance on that, then what happens is, even if there isn't a return, buyers, sorry, again, I don't mean buyers like aggregators. I meant consumers aren't going to come back, and what you're really looking for is customers that will continue to grow with you and your products and continually give you business because, and again, I can't find the statistic on it, but I think it was like gaining new customers is 10 times more expensive than retaining ones that you already have. And that's why it's so beyond important that customer service is really nailed down.
Yeah, it is. And of course, it depends. If you're in supplements and you're like getting 30, 40, and 50% of your actual volume is recurring volume, that's because it's a recurring need. If you're selling a kitchen whiz for example, then that's just going to be a whiz and it's going to last as long as it's going to last. But if you overlay that with your branding and everything else that sits behind it, what you're looking for there is, for people to become raving advocates, or simply, to speak of it and say, well, this is the brand you should have. And so that comes full circle in terms of what we call customer engagement. Because if you're only going to get one sale from a customer every now and then because your product isn't a consumable, you've really got to go that extra mile to make sure that any opportunity you can create a touch point is what you need to do. And so to divert slightly, if you look at seller feedback, which is different to a product review, it's so easy just to go to Amazon and just appeal and have the seller feedback removed. But what a lot of people don't realize is if that does happen, and you go straight to Amazon and ask for that seller feedback to be removed, the customer gets a note from Amazon letting them know that seller feedback has been removed. So that's a very quick way to really upset somebody, and they're like, oh, so I left the review in the wrong place? Okay, let me go to product review and let me leave you a real stinger. If you come back, what I'm saying is what you should have been doing from the first place is any time a customer reaches out, that's an opportunity for engagement. That's an opportunity to try and build value, get a relationship going, so they do become a raving fan. And especially because 80% of our work is unhappy customers or customers with issues or things that aren't quite right. What it means is the opportunity to turn that around sits exactly in your customer service of whoever's focusing on that. And the difficulty that sellers, that business owners have, is that they're doing all of this themselves. They're buried in their inbox till lunchtime. So what was more important, to save the existing sale or to drive on with their PPC and their marketing or work on the supply chain or whatever else? So going back to Yale's point, I think what it is anybody who's coming up to sell, you need to have a whole lot of buckets, if you will, that you realize these are the silos that I need to manage, or any prospective buyer, it doesn't have to be an aggregator, is going to see, well, if you're no longer there, how are all these silos going to operate, when you're not doing the conducting? And so customer engagement, crosses so many different areas, and it's probably the last one that looks at, because everybody's a customer service expert, aren't they? They all think they can do customer service, and they all do. But in my humble opinion, they make an average job of it because their focus is elsewhere. Yeah.
So, and I apologize for all that motion. If you guys felt like you're on a roller coaster, my computer was about to die, so I don't want to just disappear. Okay. Yeah, so that was fun for you guys. I hope no one got motion sickness. How does on support work? Like, we have to wrap this up because we're actually over time. But is it just a subscription? Like, why don't you tell us how it works?
Yeah, look, we're a subscription service, a monthly subscription service. All of our clients get their own account manager, who also has a support manager. And so if your account manager's on leave or sick or something else happens, your support manager knows 80% of it, and then people slide in behind. So you have a team. So it's not like you've got a VA and what do you do if they're off sick or go on holiday or leave. It's that continuity of service that sits there. We're all Americanos. Obviously, I'm not. I'm originally a Kiwi, but I left there a long, long time ago. And I think that does make a difference because, what an offshore team might think is a customer being a bit fussy about something, a local will know in a nanosecond, right? They're dotted around all over the US, living their lives with zillions of other Americans, that they kind of get it. And so they can intersect with a customer or take another tack because they just inherently know stuff. So we're not template driven. We don't say how many nanoseconds was it till you did a reply. We want to know how many resolutions you got. Yeah. So I think customer service really touches so many different areas in a business. Anybody who's thinking of selling their business should actually work out what all their customer touch points are, and then how can they manage or leverage the relationship at every point along the cycle. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg, so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Again, sorry for all the motion stuff. I just really didn't want my computer to die. All right. So I guess that's essentially a wrap. After we end this, guys, there will be a follow-up image that has everyone's contact information. Everyone's offering some kind of discount for their services. So you can either write that stuff down, or I will send it to you in an email with this recorded version in case you want to come back to the video and watch it again, or, see certain aspects of it. So again, Greg, thank you. Thank you to the attendees. I really hope you guys learned, even if it's just one small thing, if you learned one thing that you can implement to make your business more valuable or better, then our work here is done. Right, Greg?
That's indeed right.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Greg.
Bye.